Okay, hello. Good morning to everybody. Hold on, we're trying different technical stuff all the time. Let's make sure. But stop sharing, hide. Okay. Today we're going to talk about, and we're going to use this um, Vimeo, which means you can see me. I can do some notes. We can use PowerPoints as well to try to describe what we're talking about. Stick with me for the moment. Okay, we went up last week. We went as far in our lectures. We're talking about um, Franco, we're talking about Spain, and up to La Guerra Civil and the Spanish Civil War. We spoke about the Spanish American War of 1898. What a traumatic episode that was in Spanish history, because for the first time, Spain discovered that it was not the world power, the dominant entity in global politics, global culture that it thought it was. And that's still residual in Spain today. There's still people who think that. That's why Latinos, people would say Spaniards can be haughty, can be arrogant. Um, and that's still a very, very strong aspect in Hispanic cultural studies. So we're going a bit backwards today to try and just see where that comes from. And we spoke, it's a very strong word we used last week. We spoke about Spain as a theocracy, which is a country dominated by religion. For most of us, that in recent years, the two main theocracies we've spoken about are Afghanistan with the Taliban and Islamic State and ISIS. Spain was very, very similar with foundation to Spain. And that really continued in Spain right up oh, till after death of Franco, till the mid 70s. Um, and it's still, of course, residual, huge legacy today. In some ways, that's why Ireland and Spain have always been so friendly culturally, because Ireland, in many ways, asked your grandparents, was a theocracy, a country founded, De Valera's Irish Free State founded, and the power of the Catholic Church, the power of religion. When you look at the Irish Constitution, and Ireland throughout the 1950s, 1960s, Archbishop John McQuaid was. Ireland was films like The Rocky Road to Dublin. You'd see how strong religion is. Now, there's still residual effects and legacies of that in Ireland, but the huge, huge effect that religion had, and that in many ways explains that even though we're geographically quite distant, our weather is very different, racially distant, but why we have this great fraternity with Spain, two countries dominated by religion. Excuse me. I'm okay. Imagine we were together, me coughing inside in the class. Okay. So today we're going to talk about Spain as a crossroads of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So we're going back a bit to the past, and I wanted to put up this map. I know this might seem a bit simplistic, but Spain was conquered, as we said, or was it by Muslim invaders? I think it's quite interesting. You see, 711 AD, they come right through the top of the country. 713 Zaragoza, 712 the Cantabrians. The Muslim invaders, we call them Moors, Los Moros from North Africa. Looking here, well, actually, I should be able to. I think I can, but it could be dangerous to start using a laser pointer. Cantabrians, Basques, up at the top, still the Basques that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, the ideas of independence, etc. Okay. So almost immediately, Christian kings began taking back territory in the Iberian Peninsula. And this is very much the myth before the creation of modern Spain, this idea of la reconquista. We'd see different periods there, 914 to 1080, 1080 to 1130, 1130 to 1210, 1200 to 1250, 1215 to 1418, the last period then down here when Granada is taken is 1480 to 1492. What I want to show here is that the Reconquista or reconquest or resettlement of Spain took place over almost over 500 years. But in our perception, Spain is this event of 1492 and El Suspiro del Moro and the taking of Granada. As one can see in Leon, from the 10th century on, we have Christian kings. So the Reconquista is a very, very long event. So the point we're making there is the Moors maintained and had retreated in many ways to the southern tip of the peninsula, that is the Kingdom of Granada. I put up there the Alhambra Palace of the Moorish Kingdom of Granada. And if you go today to the south of Spain, be it Cordoba, I think we mentioned that in lectures before, the biggest tourist attraction, the Mezquita, which is the mosque with a church in the centre, La Giralda, the great church in Seville, simply a converted mosque. It's the third largest cathedral in the world, Seville Cathedral, after St. Patrick's in New York, and of course St. Peter's in Rome is the largest in the world. Okay. So the reconquest of Spain, and this is, again, it's a pity because people say to me over the years, call me Mr. Maps. That's why we're doing this, because I bring these maps into class. I think they give us a taste of what I'm talking about, of this is the reconquest. There is no Spain. There is no Spain. There's Castile, Leon, as we see, Portugal, Andalusia, Aragon. As we say, Aragon disappears in many ways. Today we know Zaragoza, but looks to be the big country there. Catalonia, which today talks about independence, it's Aragon. It's Aragonese. And it's Aragon who has the Balearic Islands, these type of... So I think some of these maps are very, very interesting because they give us an insight into what really was happening in pre-Spain, in the Iberian Peninsula, before the creation of Spain. Just looking here in the centre, I really should have... I'm pointing here with my finger, but you can't see me. These cities right in the centre, which will become the nerve centre of the Spain we know, Felipe II, Carlos V, that we spoke about, Valladolid, Salamanca, Avila, Burgos, are lost cities. Look, nothing's really happening there. It's all happening in the south, Andalusia, Jerez, Cadiz, Tarifa, Malaga, Almeria. So the power base in Spain, as we said, and it's because of Isabella Católica, who we'll speak about in a minute, the power base moves to the centre of Spain, in many ways from the coast inwards. It's like in Ireland, imagining the power base moving from Dublin or Cork into Leitrim or Longford. The Catholic monarchs, I'm trying to keep it simple here, just put very devout Catholic rulers, Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, Fernando y Isabel, los Reyes Católicos. The Catholic monarchs, and that is, they imbue the new Spain with an atmosphere of Catholicism, and it becomes that strong word we put up, THEOC, a theocracy, a country founded on, based upon, and totally dependent on religion as its raison d'etre. Again, because some people are trying to make it more visible if we're not in class. Isabel la Católica, there's from Medina del Campo. She was known for her beauty, for intelligence. She was the Queen of Castilla, the largest Christian kingdom. So stay with me, the largest Christian kingdom at the time. She helped the king organise wars and even joined them on campaign. So it's quite... Spain is a country which, lags far behind a lot of the rest of Europe in women's rights, something violencia de género, which is gender violence, is a serious problem in Spain. It's a serious problem in Spain. It's a serious problem all over the world, but it's always been a very, very serious problem in Spain. But just for that one moment in history, it was the female who came to the fore in Spain, and that was Isabella Católica. It should have been, as we said other weeks, Fernando de Aragon, but it was Isabella Católica. Once again, we'll be looking at that in future lectures. Why do we have in Spain this type of male-female divide? That's very cultural, but again, it comes from what paradoxically Isabel invented, the Catholic Church, where we had superiority, we had monks and priests, and then below them the nuns. And these things are very much still in Spanish culture. And this is why we're here in these lectures. The country which is the longest, where females have the longest hair in Europe, and male have the shortest, is Spain. You might say to me, well, what relevance is that? That's gender divide. That's all of you out there who, Mango, girls' clothes, lovely girls, Mango, female, feminine, Thara, quite similar as well. What was oh my God, the big Swedish shop that never took off in Spain? Oh my God, I should know it. That sells the. It'll come back to me in a second, but from an anecdotal point of view, I remember Levi's brought out Levi's in Spain, a pair of androgynous unisex. Never cut off in Spain. Never cut off. Things girls do, things boys do, and that very much that gender divide in Spanish society. God, I wish you were in class. We're going to look it up here because you'll be able to tell me straight away the name of the shop, which highly successful in the rest of Europe. We put in a Swedish retailer. I think it starts with an A. Not like H&M. H&M. Okay. Spain. You ought to get men's clothes, women's clothes. Hombre corte fiel, female corte fiel, but the division very much between the two. My hand there is chopping. I can't see it in the screen. Okay, but so the point to make about Isabella Católica is that she was out of sync with the rest of Spanish cultural history. Thanks be to God, says you. There's Fernando, who again was out of sync, a fierce warrior. El Rey de Aragon. He'd married Isabel and together united most of Spain under one crown, but it was Isabel who took the kudos. Fernando, as we see him there, again, he was older. He has been not forgotten by history, but it's Isabella Católica who would be the dominant party in the relationship. So we're leaving out Colón, which we said in other weeks, Columbus and Isabella Católica's personal relationship with Colón, with Cristobal Colón, Christopher Columbus, was so vital in the creation of Spain out of this union of Castile and Aragon, which became Castile and Leon. And Aragon just fades. Aragon, it's the worry sometimes when there's a merger. Controversial to say, but like UL and Mary I, the worry that there'd be a merger and Mary I would get sucked in and just become part of. Whenever there's a merger of two clubs, I think there's two soccer clubs in Dublin, Bray Wanderers and Cabinteely have merged, and will you lose your name? Sometimes GA clubs, rugby clubs merge, and that's what really happened. Aragon merged with Castile, and it became Castilla. That's the language we speak today, Castellano. Aragonese is some dialect, that people speak up in the mountains of the Pyrenees. It should be the language of Spain. We should be calling it Castellano Aragonese, but we don't. Everything is about Castilian Spanish, Castilian cuisine, Castilian way of life. Leon has its own bitterness, but at least managed to tag on in Castilla Leon. So the war against the Moors, going back to religion, between 1482 and 1492, Isabel and Ferdinand, they waged the Granada War to conquer all of Spain and unite as one Christian kingdom. So at the time it's Castilla and Aragon are waging this war in Granada, which is the deep south of Spain, and Lucia. And in 1492, they succeeded in defeating the last Moorish king, Boabdil. Okay, we see paintings there of Boabdil, and the same year, 1492, that Columbus discovers the New World. And we'd have the Jews we'll talk about in a few minutes being expelled. So we have this 1492 as a seminal date in Spanish history and in Hispanic cultural studies. So what do? We expel the Moors. At first, the Catholic monarchs allowed the Moors to worship and govern themselves. Then, after a few years, they began requiring the Moors to convert to Christianity. These were called conversos, Conversos. Many Moors fled to North Africa. They were called Moriscos. And still today, you'll find that in Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, etc. So here's where something comes quite controversial, but I think we have to mention it inside. And we're students of Hispanic studies. As I said, we're preparing to go to a lot of us to Spain in the future, and that. So we need to talk about these things. Paying for the war against. It was mainly a conscript war. Sorry, a war of mercenaries where the people were paid. There's talk of El Cid, the famous hero, being a mercenary, etc. So it wasn't that someone rose up in a revolution and people took arms. A war had to be paid for. And this Granada War was very expensive. It lasted 10 years, 1482 to 1492. What we're saying here is that Castilla paid Catalans, paid Galicians, Portuguese, paid different people to take part in this war. Now that raises huge questions in itself as to the authenticity of the war, who they were fighting against. We spoke later in 1492 that the money would come in from the New World, and we spoke about the mortgage, but that's after 1492. So suddenly in 1492, Spain, or Castilla, the country that would later become known as Spain, becomes hugely wealthy. But 1482 to 1492, it was not. So how do we pay for this war? How do we pay a soldier to go fight in Granada and lose his life? And he's from Catalonia, or from where he had no allegiance to this kingdom of Castile or Leon. As he put here, much of it was paid for by confiscating the property of Spanish Jews. That's a very emotive thing to say. And often in Spain, there's people will say that anti-Semitism, which is persecution or racism against the Jewish people, it's a global issue, and we know what happened in the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. It's a huge issue in the world today, anti-Semitism. In Spain, often people would say, well, there's no anti-Semitism in Spain. That's because in Spain they got rid of the Jews. There were no Jews, and it should be, and is in many ways an issue of shame in Spain. It has been recognised, but only in the last 10, 20 years by the Spanish government, because the Jews were a huge community in Spain. They were part of, when we talk about la cultura de las tres religiones, and that was Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and that they coexisted for this brief period. But once we had a Catholic nation that would come to power and later come to dominate the peninsula, it was anti-Jewish in its very inception. So where were the Jews in Spain? Los judíos. Where did this come from? The The Jews in Spain, a considerable power. In fact, the Jewish community was one of the largest in Spain and Portugal, one of the largest in Europe. Jews in Spain had considerable power. As I put it, Jews in the courts of all the kings of Spain and Portugal. There were Jews, judíos. They were involved in banking, business. Toledo, and you would see this in every, kind of old Spanish city, La Juderia, the Jewish quarter. In Seville, next to the cathedral. You find it in Granada, Zaragoza. Many early bankers were Jewish because Christians were prohibited from usury, which is charging interest on loans. Okay, so that was a Christian. That was an issue too for Muslims. So that gives this stigma perception that the Jews were mean, Jews were into money, Jews were bankers, but they were controlling this trade. Then banks are critical. Without a business can't get started, and people needed money, needed credit, needed finance. And these same bankers, in fact, helped finance the war against the Moors. Suddenly we see this coexistence of the three religions isn't going to last too much longer. So Jews were hated by many. Okay, this was called anti-Semitism. It was jealousy on behalf of the Jews. Jews were often the scapegoat in the Middle Ages. You had words like pogroms. There's one in Limerick here in the 1920s. Anti-Jewish, anti-Jews were held, and this idea of anti-Semitism reached its zenith in what happened in Nazi Germany and the persecution of the Jews, which happened throughout Europe, and the Holocaust. I mean, put it where ghetto comes from. The Italian word meaning slag, ghetto, as an industrial waste. And Jews were forced to live in the crummy industrial parts of the city. Jews were Jewish ghettos in Poland. So you get this idea of anti-Semitism, which definitely did exist in Spain. It still exists today, and it's something that we need to talk about. We need to discuss. We'll see now where the Jews went, what happened to the Jews back in 1492, but still in Spain in Spanish in Holy Week, which is a Christian Semana Santa. There's a phrase, there's limonada, which is a lemonade. It's a lovely drink. And one of the places you get it in Leon, where Sase Limonada, which is an alcoholic lemonade, like a Bacardi Breeze or RTD or one of those. And people, la gente sale para matar judíos. Let's go out and kill some Jews. It's only a statement, it's only, but wow, that means let's go and have a few RTDs and a few tapas. Vamos a matar judíos. Often Spanish people don't realise that anti-Semitism is ingrained even in their own language, as much as there's towns in Spain called Santiago, St. James, who was the patron saint of Spain. His name is Santiago Matamoros. St. James, the Moor Slayer, but St. James, the Muslim killer. Again, ingrained within the language, ingrained within Spain. And this is coming from the very beginning, the invention of the start of Spain, because it's on this Catholic, isolationist, anti-Muslim. We know about the anti-Muslim, and we still have these events, Moros y Cristianos down in Murcia, Via Viciosa, those festivals that are held every year where the Christians defeat the Moors, and then people say there's no anti-Islamic sentiment, etc. But I think the Jewish thing is more, it's more subtle, and it's more beneath the surface, but it does exist. So conversos, they were many of the most powerful and wealthy people in Spain were conversos, who were Jews whose family converted to Christianity. So that complicated that they were Jews whose family converted to Christianity. And then something comes about that, I suppose, for this lecture today, there was The Spanish Inquisition, we mentioned it briefly a couple of weeks ago, and this was a legal court, La Inquisición, and it was launched by Los Reyes Católicos to purify Spanish society, especially conversos who they believed were returning to their Jewish faith. This lapse of faith was believed to be heresy, so you'd be called before the Spanish Inquisition, which continued, and it's very interesting, the Spanish Inquisition continued right up to the 19th century. And if you go to the archives, there are literally hundreds of thousands, millions of pages. It was a court where you were brought before, and you could be burned at the stake. It's a Portuguese word, they call it auto de fe, an act of faith. And the Inquisition was a religious court, the very same as what you have in the Taliban today, where people were branded, were persecuted according to their religion. You see below this, that's from Monty Python. That's a famous the sketch. And still, I don't know if any of you heard or used that, but it's a phrase named the Spanish Inquisition, which gives the idea of someone, like maybe you're going out and you're 14 or 15, whatever, and your parents are saying, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" So, what's this? The Spanish Inquisition? It's in popular culture, the idea of someone being unfairly persecuted, being pursued, bloody Inquisition, and it comes from this time, and again, it's La Santa Inquisición, the Holy Inquisition. Any traditionally Jewish rituals or behaviours could be considered a lapse of faith. So examples could be not eating pork. Here we go to Spain. Okay, have a look at Spanish culture. Jewish people tradition did not eat pork. So we have in Spain, then we have in our Spain, we love our Catholic Spain. Pork everywhere. We eat every part of the pig. Oreja, okay. Sangre, morcilla, pork blood. Every jamon. Even in our own, a beautiful girl is called una jamona, a lovely ham. Okay, so you get those type of that, and the closer you go to the line with, and so we see the Muslims and Jews almost together in that. You go down to Melilla, Ceuta, Spanish colonies in Morocco, you get the best ham. You get people eating. It's almost seen as I would say, as a provocation to Jewish Muslim people, in this that jamon chorizo is seen as the quintessential food of Spain, in opposition to the other. So then we have that. So pork. Second, they're not working Friday night till Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, because Christian Sabbath is Sunday. So that they're not observing the Sabbath, and eating traditionally Jewish food, kosher. Okay, so all those things were and people who had to wear, which will come up again in the Holocaust and come up in Nazi Germany, that people have to wear over them an overall with a cross if they were a converso, and the more. So you had a kind of basically religious persecution. So here's the more gory side of the Spanish Inquisition that some of you might have heard of, and it's under Torquemada. Torquemada was one of the most famous films made about him, the Grand Inquisitor. The Inquisition sought to find these heretics. So to get these heretics to confess, inquisitors would employ threats and torture. So all the type of the modern torture. If you want to go and you're into that I think in Segovia, in central Spain, there's a museum of torture of the Inquisition, where they would stretch people, pull out people's eyeballs, all the type of cruelty that associated with the Holy Inquisition. Again, what's the legacy of that in contemporary Spain? We see a society that is very, very much quite bloody, quite violent. Bullfighting is obviously a classic example of this. Even on the news, like in Spain, remember, I grew up in Ireland. Unfortunately, in the 80s, I would have been a child, and you would have seen a lot of, it was during the very gory, terrible period in Northern Ireland, in the Troubles, where there would be daily explosions and bombs. But on the Irish news, living here on the island of Ireland, growing up in Limerick, I never saw those things because in Ireland we don't really show on the news. We don't. That's just cultural. We don't show in a newspaper. You don't see people after a terrorist attack or after a car crash, etc. But stay with terrorism. The first time I saw bodies from Northern Ireland was in Spain. I remember in Enniskillen bombing in the early 90s. You'd see the images which were cut by Irish television and by British television were there in Spain, and perhaps a good thing, but a much more gory society and those type of things. Quite similar with a car crash or a plane crash. So you have much more, from a cultural point of view, violent society, um, um, where it's not hidden in that, and very much the Inquisition was at the heart of that. Because remember, the Inquisition is there at the creation of Spain, at the creation of a Spanish identity, of a Spanish culture. As I put at the bottom here, thousands were tortured, imprisoned for life, and or burned at the stake in Auto de Fe, which is an act of faith. Just some kind of, to give an idea, we have some of the instruments of torture here on the wheel. Okay, people being hung from the at these cities, Salamanca, Valladolid, Avila, centres of the Inquisition. And again, Inquisition then, from the English point of view, as Protestantism had taken off, and Spain and the Catholicism was seen as a cruel religion, a cruel country, and a lot of these pictures and that rumors were spread about. We called it La Leyenda Negra, the Black Legend, about how bad the Inquisition was, and it wasn't as bad as it was portrayed by some, but it was bad. But what's most important for me is that it continues on until the 19th century. Here we have the famous outer the phase, which are acts of faith, which are people being burned at the stake, and the idea of a public humiliation, public, again, continues in Spain, those idea of not behind closed doors, guillotine, etc. Things are happening straight up. People are able to, so very much idea of community engagement, which again is very important in Spain. The idea of una comunidad, those type of things. So really, let's kind of cutting to the chase and talking about anti-Semitism and the Jews in Spain. What do we do? The Jews are expelled. The issues, Inquisition, trying to make them convert, then expelled. Hopefully, you're thinking about this economically, socially, culturally. You lose. I mean, if we were to expel tomorrow all Cork people from Ireland, like we would lose out a lot. I could hear out there some racists saying, or some family, we'd lose nothing, get rid of them. Like suddenly you lose, But economically, but if you have you need remember now, Spain has the economic power that it's mortgaged the country with, as we said, Columbus's arrival in South. They have the power to do this, the economic power. It's wrong. It's wrong economically, socially, culturally, morally. But when someone has the economic power behind, quite similar today, you're probably watching the news, and will Putin or will Russia invade Ukraine or not? Because it's got the gas. And the gas, if it couldn't, wouldn't have the power to do it. When you have the monetary financial power, you can do things which might be morally wrong, but you have the power to do it. That's always been the issue with North Korea, that North Korea doesn't have the economic power or something to be behind it to engage in, as one might say, moral or activities which are not for the benefit of humanity. So Spain had the money, but it obviously didn't use it wisely. We'd expelled the Arabs and the Moors, so we lost all these great architects, sociologists, philosophers, Ibn Khaldun, father of modern sociology from Cordoba. They're all gone. We get rid of all the people who built the aqueducts, like Segovia built the Moorish drainage systems, the palaces, mathematics, the invention of zero. That got rid of all these people, and now we have this Jewish community which is expert in craftsmanship, banking, in all types of intellectual pursuits, and we just decided there were so many that they were heretics, that they were a bad influence. So hundreds of thousands of Jews were forced from Spain. That's why when we say that Spain there's no problems with Jews, so there was never a problem with Jews in Spain at the same time as Nazi Germany. It's because they got rid of them hundreds of years before. And it's a sad fact, but it's a fact right through, and it has been recognised by recent Spanish governments, and apologies have been issued for this. If you go to, it's quite, if you're into Hispanic studies, it's quite very sad. If you go to Israel, you will find the descendants of many of these Spanish people who were exiled from Spain, and they still speak quite a beautiful old Spanish, because the Spanish language just come, as they call it, Ladino, Ladino. And you'd understand it. It's very, very similar of the usted forms of the verb. You would also hear Ladino being used, as in today in modern Israel, you would have heard it being used throughout the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, mid first half 20th century, all over Germany, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Poland, those sort of places, because that's where the Jews went first when they were expelled from Spain. So many of the Jews who were involved in the Holocaust, and they were there because they'd been expelled from Spain a couple of hundred years before. So the idea of the Jewish people being persecuted on the move, and obviously, and after what happened in Nazi Germany, most of them moved to the Jewish homeland of Israel, and many to America as well. And I've heard it, you hear Ladino being used, especially in religious ceremonies, and that in New York, where there's a large, in America, but New York particularly, where there's a large Jewish community. It's very touching, because those people, and they actually were given several years ago by the Spanish government the right to return. They were recognised as Spanish citizens who were there a long time before others arrived. So, continuing that point, we can say, where did they go? And these are the migrations and settlements of the Spanish Jews. And we can see that some of them went to the Lisbon, where they found a significant Jewish community. Some of them went to Morocco, and you still find synagogues and communities of Spanish Jewry there. Some of them went to modern-day Algeria, Tunisia. You'll find on the island of Jerba, where sadly there was a horrible terrorist attack several years ago, and they were descendants of Spanish Jewry along the coast to Oran in Algeria. Sorry, that was Tunis. It's down here. I'm using my finger with the arrow, but you can't see me. To Tunisia, along here all the way to Egypt. So you'll find these pockets of Spanish Jewry, JWRY, here in Cairo. Some of them arrived to Israel and the Holy Land, Greece, Sicily, Rome, Italy, and up through Central Europe, up as far as London, and the northern Jews who arrived in Holland, Belgium, those countries. Okay, the Low Countries, call them Luxembourg, etc. So, in conclusion, and with an element of shame, we can say that we spoke last week about what enabled this. And what enabled this was the money, the hypotheca, the mortgage, the money from the New World. but Spain becomes a unified Catholic country. And the Inquisition and expelling of the Jews and Moors was so successful that by the 1500s, 1550, Spain was almost completely Catholic. A theocracy, as we'd say, but Spain was almost completely Catholic. And in the process, Isabella and Ferdinand, deliberately put Isabella and Ferdinand, became the most powerful kings in Europe. I've put Isabella first because it was her. She should go first. In Spain, we always put because that's Spanish language, the patriarchal society, male dominated. We put Fernando y Isabel, los Reyes Católicos, Fernando y Isabel, but it really should be Isabel y Fernando. So we tried to right that wrong, do something positive today. Okay, I know these classes are very, very intense because we don't have the nuances and delays associated with doors open and that. So it's a good bit of stuff. So I just want you to think about that, and we're going to move on. We've gone forward really in Spanish history, taking these big jumps, as you remember from we spoke about Spain, the Romans, and the Celtas. Then we jumped forward to the Arabs arriving in Spain 711 AD, and the Arab Empire. And then we said what happened with Castile and Columbus, etc. And I want to go back today because it's so important, the idea of religion in Spain. But I went forward with Los Borbones, do you remember them, the Bourbons? And Spain goes into decline. We mentioned how Spain missed out on the Enlightenment, missed out on the Industrial Revolution, and we said missed out on the Spanish-American War was the first realization of that this kind of isolated, almost self-ostracized Catholic country on its own could not survive on its own. Still after the First World War as well, and things were brewing up with people on both sides, which would lead to the Spanish Civil War. That's something we'll be talking about a lot in the weeks to come. Okay, now thanks a million, and just as we say every week, and hopefully we won't have to say it for many weeks more. There's vaccination clinics out there with boosters, etc. I know a lot of people have taken advantage of them. There's still a lot of cases of COVID going around. Increasingly, you hear people who of what one might say normal ages, people in their 40s, 30s, 50s, getting sick. People still getting sick. Okay, thanks be to God with vaccines, and this variant mightn't be as strong, so people aren't dying as such in the same numbers. But it's not a thing you want to get. So, and it's certainly not a thing that any of us want to pass on to anybody else. So just be careful, follow the advice with the hygiene, with sanitation, and mask wearing, etc. And we'll see where we are in a while, and we'll hopefully see each other. Okay, in person when it's the right time to do so. So I'm going to hopefully save this, and then I'm going to upload this on YouTube because I think it's the safest way. The best way to make sure that you have full access in case there's any issues is to subscribe to the channel. The channel, I think, is Charlie Murphy. Don't worry, he's my son, he's a little fella. And I think so we were looking at him playing Geo. He was delighted playing GeoGuessr or dancing or FIFA, the kind of stuff he does. But he's a nice little boy. But and he was delighted with that. So if you want to do that, you're more than welcome. But subscribe in case there's any issues. But it seems to be the safest and most easiest way for people to access it, because on OneDrive and ShareDrive and different sizes of files and all these kind of things. So I'll save that and upload it now. Subscribe to that channel, and you'll have full access to any other stuff that's been uploaded, information. Okay, mind yourselves. All the best. Take care. Bye bye now. Adios. Devil deceive. Stop recording. This would help, wouldn't it?